Welcome to Nothing But the Truth. I'm your host, Trudy Stern. For years, redistricting was something most Americans barely paid attention to. But redistricting matters because it determines how congressional district lines are drawn. And those lines often determine which party has the advantage in winning seats in Congress. In many ways, whoever controls the maps can shape who controls political power in Washington for years to come. And recently, one of the most important redistricting fights in America took place in Virginia. Democrats attempted to redraw Virginia's congressional maps through a voter referendum that could have dramatically reshaped the state's congressional delegation in their favor. But the Virginia Supreme Court struck the effort down, ruling that the process used to place the amendment before voters violated the state constitution. What did that actually mean politically? It meant that Democrats lost a major opportunity to create additional Democratic-leaning congressional seats heading into the midterms, and the existing maps remain in place. The reason that this matters nationally is because redistricting is no longer just about local politics. It's about control of Congress, it's about political power, and it's about the future direction of the country. One of the states now at the center of that conversation is Florida. Florida went through a major redistricting fight after the last census when Governor DeSantis pushed through a new congressional map that significantly reshaped several South Florida districts. District lines were redrawn, communities were shifted, and districts that had previously leaned Democrat became far more competitive politically. One of the districts affected by those changes is Florida's 23rd congressional district, an area with a large Jewish population and a district that has become increasingly important in the broader national political conversation. My next guest is Scott Singer, the mayor of Boca Raton and a candidate for Congress in Florida's 23rd congressional district. Scott has served as mayor of Boca Raton since 2018 and has focused heavily on public safety, economic growth, infrastructure, and strengthening Boca Raton's position as one of the leading cities in South Florida. Professionally, he's an attorney with a background in business and government law, and he has become an increasingly outspoken voice on issues impacting the Jewish community and the U.S.-Israel relationship. He's also taken strong public stands against rising anti-Semitism and extremist politics, including speaking out forcefully against Zoran Mamdani and the normalization of anti-Israel rhetoric. For many of our listeners, this race may be closer to home than you think. If you have a second home in South Florida, children living there, relatives there, or spend part of the year there, Scott Singer may very well be your next congressman. So, Scott, welcome to Nothing But the Truth.
Thanks, Trudy, for having me. And I just want to clarify some things because with the redistricting, the number of the district has changed now. My home in Boca Raton hasn't moved, but the district is now the 25th district. Just a simple renumbering with the map. The district now runs from Delray Beach through all of Boca Raton and most of suburban Boca Raton, then down the coast through Broward and all the way to Miami Beach, where I was born, where I was raised, and where I live now. And I just want to clarify also for your listeners, I just concluded my term as mayor of Boca Raton in March. So the last 5 weeks, I've been the former mayor of Boca Raton. But still, thank you for the warm introduction and welcoming me.
Well, thank you for those corrections. What an unbelievable district you have. Wherever you go along that coast, you're getting the most beautiful views of the Atlantic Ocean. Really, really remarkable.
We are, and I feel blessed. I was out with the campaign team. We were knocking doors in Miami Beach, and I had some volunteers, students from Boca Raton who've been down but really hadn't seen as many parts of the district where we knocked doors. And we were all just frankly marveling. You've got water on both sides because it's the barrier island east of the Intracoastal for most of the way, Miami Beach all the way up through Fort Lauderdale, Hollywood, Hallandale, Sunny Isles Beach, Aventura, Bal Harbor. And I know these names are common to many of your listeners who do have homes there, and then all the way up through Boca Raton and Delray Beach. It's a spectacular district. I feel blessed to live here. I feel blessed to grow up here, and the opportunity to represent that district. I don't think there's a nicer congressional district in the nation.
Wow. So let's start with redistricting. Could you explain what happened in Virginia and why it failed?
Absolutely. And the difference between Virginia and Florida are very stark from a legal standpoint and a practical standpoint. As you said, redistricting happens every 10 years, and a lot of people don't pay attention to it. There was nothing precluding states from doing a mid cycle redistricting. We'll start with Virginia because they seem to do it. They were very candid about their methodology for doing it because other states were doing it. And they were going to suspend their constitution for a one time effort because of what other states were doing. You can leave out the substance because the Virginia Supreme Court decision struck it on clear procedural grounds. The Virginia Constitution called for two different meetings of the legislature to go vote on an issue. They got the vote done in late October, right before the November election and before that legislature would have risen. The problem was, the court said, that over 1.3 million Virginians had already cast ballots in that election. And they didn't give up their constitutional right to select new candidates based on, or new leaders based on what their stances were. That was the reason Virginia put it into its constitution and was detailed in the court's opinion. The Virginians thought that if you're having a constitutional amendment, you have it passed twice. So you have an intervening election so you can vote for people who know what their stances are on the issue. That was deprived of Virginia voters. It was an easy call for the majority of the court, and that effort failed. Now, contrast that to what's happened in Florida.
Wait a minute
Florida, oh,
before you
please.
go on, because that's a lot to digest. That was a
Certainly.
lot of information. So just to get this clear, it was first and foremost a procedural reason that the Supreme Court struck it down in Virginia.
Yes,
Totally procedural.
the Supreme Court said you failed to follow the procedure that was clearly laid out in the state constitution. Therefore, it was an unconstitutional effort. You can't just do this right in the waning days of the legislature after so many people have voted, because you're taking away the right ensconced in that state constitution to have an intervening election so you can vote for candidates for the legislature based on their view on the pending amendment.
And it was totally procedural. Is there some sort of push to try to overturn that ruling?
Well, lamentably, we heard this week, which would have been crazy, that it was being discussed and widely reported in the press that Virginia was going to change the law to create a mandatory retirement age of the Supreme Court so that they could appoint all new justices. If that weren't bad enough to try to just change the game and throw out justices, they wanted to set the mandatory age at 54 because all of the judges were 54. That was the youngest age of the judge. I don't know who thought up this crazy plan. Probably violates federal law on age discrimination. I know there's some debate on that, but more importantly, the principle. We're going to kick out judges because we disagree and say that anyone over 54 is unfit to serve as a judge? Are we going to have students just coming out of law school? A ridiculous proposal. It seems to have fallen by the wayside. Shame on those who even brought it up.
Wow, that is really, really unbelievable. Most unbelievable is that 54 age limit. Uh, don't want to get too much into the personal stuff, but I would be kicked right out. Uh,
So
so,
would most jurists, frankly, to reach the Supreme Court of a state, you usually practice some time in your career. Yes.
yeah, I would think so. Okay, so now on to Florida. How different is that?
So Florida is night and day. It wasn't a last minute gambit by a legislature, and it wasn't done in response to what other states are doing. That's what Virginia said in the text of the supporting legislation. Florida did it for two reasons. Last year, the Supreme Court said that you could no longer use race as a basis for drawing districts, anticipating the court challenge that was just decided 2 weeks ago by the U.S. Supreme Court, which basically took away the principle of the Voting Rights Act. They ruled on a case in Louisiana which challenged that specific racially based district, but even the dissent said that Voting Rights Act legislation is all but a dead letter in the law, meaning it doesn't have force and effect. That we should not be drawing districts based on race. It violates equal protection laws under the Constitution. So you had two court decisions in Florida, the state Supreme Court and now the U.S. Supreme Court decision, which came down just 2 weeks ago, right as Florida was about to approve new maps. Florida did approve new maps. There was a second very good reason why Florida was redistricting. We've had a tremendous growth in population. You mentioned at the outset that districts may change. They're becoming, some were less Democratic leaning when they were. That's because the population's changed. We've had a lot of New Yorkers come down. We've had a lot of people from other states move for the free state of Florida, the lower taxes we have, and their registrations have reflected that. In the last 7 years, there have been a net gain of 1.7 million more Republicans in Florida than Democrats. 8 years ago, there were an advantage of Democrats of about 300,000. Now it's 1.4 million Republicans more than Democrats in the state. People are voting more Republican. People are moving to Florida are voting more Republican. And so it was, you also had a change in where the population was. We had more people move in South Florida, more to Central Florida. The legislature and the governor drafted districts that equally apportion population as it's supposed to do. And you don't have to wait for 10 years. We had a lot of migration within the state and from other parts, other states here. So it made it all balanced.
Very, very, very unbelievable to see the difference between Florida and Virginia. Do you see something like this happening in Texas?
Well, no, Texas already did their redistricting earlier this year. It was more based along the lines of Florida. It wasn't a last minute gambit like Virginia. But since the Supreme Court decided 2 weeks ago that you can no longer, basically, the principle is that racially drawn districts are suspect, if not unconstitutional, other states are now redrawing them because the effect of the Voting Rights Act is not what it was years ago,
Right. But
or even before this decision.
so the new lines in both Texas and in Florida, do you expect those to stay?
Yes, I think I haven't been tracking Texas as much, but I'm pretty sure that the court has already ruled. They've already had their primaries, so they're not changing them for this cycle. And I don't see any of the challenges are going forward. Florida, some challenges were just filed, but I'm confident that the governor and the legislature were complying with the Constitution, both state and federal, when they drew these districts. I expect that they're going to stand up. Regardless, I was already running for Congress. It hasn't changed much about what I go about. I was running for Congress. I filed in January when it was the 23rd district and took in Boca to Broward County, Fort Lauderdale. Now it's just numbered the 25th. It takes in basically all of those areas plus more in Miami Beach, again, my birthplace. So for me on the ground, it hasn't changed my operations at all. Just I'm knocking on new doors that I wasn't a few months ago.
So how did it change actually? You sort of said it very quickly. Your district, what was it and what is it now?
Sure. Previously was Boca Raton along the coast. So the city of Boca Raton, a few of the suburban areas of Boca Raton, down through communities in Broward County, which were Delray Beach, Pompano Beach, Hillsborough Beach, Fort Lauderdale among them. It's now taken on more territory of suburban Boca Raton, which actually has more people living in it than the city. The city limits, the name Boca Raton spreads beyond our city limits. So it's about 200,000 people there, down the east coast of Broward, through all the way through Fort Lauderdale, Hollywood, Hallandale, and then into Miami-Dade County, including Aventura, Golden Beach, Val Harbor, Sunny Isles Beach, a few other communities too, down to North Miami Beach and Miami Beach. 26 municipalities in total. Pardon me if you live in one. I didn't name it all for the sake of this time, but 26 communities, very oceanfront, very coastal. And I
So
think we have unique interests and issues.
what did you lose?
Uh, it took away some of the parts of those cities. So Fort Lauderdale got tighter instead of encompassing most of the city. Now it's more the eastern part. Same thing with Pompano Beach, Delray Beach. It also lost some communities out west in Broward County, like Parkland and Coral Springs, are no longer in the district.
I see. And in terms of the other districts that gained those areas, did they grow in a different way as well?
Sure. Again, all the districts are approximately, actually, the legislature mapped it out to be the exact same number of people. They divided it evenly among 28 districts to the person. And they've all grown, they've all changed shape a little. So it's not like just different parts going in different places. This district formerly took in territory of 3 other districts. I think that's common. It's a little bit of but it was also made more compact too, geographically.
Well, thanks for explaining to our listeners how this redistricting works. One final thought on that. It was it done specifically only to affect, we're reading in the newspapers and we're hearing on the news that it was done specifically to affect the amount of Republican seats in Florida. Was that the goal of Governor DeSantis? Do you know? I mean, you might not know.
The public statements were that there were multiple goals. And the reason first being that you have to allocate population fairly. We've had population shifts. I saw one media comment, and or one quote by someone allegedly, and I didn't hear him say it personally, but that they did look at partisanship there, but there were a number of independent reasons here, but the governor and legislature could better speak to those. Again, I feel that I'm confident that what they did fully complies with both the state and federal constitutions. And for me on the ground, it's just more friends I get to meet in a new area and getting back home to my home turf of Miami Beach, where I was born and raised for my first early years.
Fantastic. Thanks for that. So now let's talk about you. You were the very successful mayor of Boca Raton, and you really were very outspoken as a mayor when Mayor Mamdani was running for his role. And first of all, as a New Yorker, I want to thank you for that. But I know you took out that very public billboard in Times Square. Tell us about that.
Well, sure. It was good timing. We were already doing some national media on highlighting Boca Raton. Newsmax happens to be headquartered here. We had a great story with them on the businesses that had been flocking to Boca Raton over the last few years. We have no state income tax. We have the lowest property tax rate of any full service city. So we've attracted thousands of high paying jobs. That's one of the reasons I ran for city council 12 years ago, to create better job opportunities for younger people. I didn't feel I had as many growing up in South Florida. We did a story with Newsmax that aired 2 days after the Mondani primary win, and I was already in studio commenting on it. And that led to a lot more national media. That led to a sweetheart deal that we were offered for a discounted billboard in Times Square by someone saw that what we were doing. So we targeted the businesses. We've been laser focused on attracting high paying jobs. We know that everyone who wanted to flee New York, the higher taxes that were coming and have already been promised, and we're seeing him doubling down on that. The higher taxes, the crime, the other things that have frankly saddened, made New York sadder than it was a few years ago. We were already tracking the businesses to bring their jobs here. We've had great success, and that was really the billboard. But we got a lot of media attention from it. We were actually on the cover of the New York Post with a headline, "Zoran so far away," trying to, Boca Raton mayor trying to pitch businesses in New York. So, we got a lot of earned media value out of that, but we got a lot of jobs too, and they're going to continue to come. We wanted to put Boca Raton on the radar screen. We are a corporate haven. We've got half the corporate headquarters in the county. We're not the county seat. We have 40 publicly traded companies. We've got a lot of private equity, hedge funds, a lot of money management companies too, and a lot of other industries. We're diversified, and we wanted people coming here to understand how great the workforce is.
Did you ever have a conversation with Zoran Mamdani? Did he reach out to you or you reach out to him?
I have not. And frankly, I don't know what we'd have to say that we share commonality. I view things very differently from him. I'm a capitalist. I don't think we should be punishing businesses. I don't think we should go on camera in a creepy video, tap on the screen and say, "See this multimillionaire who's bringing hundreds of jobs here? We're going to tax him extra because he doesn't use this apartment enough." That makes no sense from a municipal standpoint. I'd want people, if I'm a mayor, you already have charge high property taxes on a high value property. If no one's using the property, then you don't have any road wear and tear. You don't have any police calls, any fire calls. They're an ideal standpoint, from just the tax base, and yet he's targeting them. So what did Ken Griffin of Citadel do? Say he's moving more jobs to Miami. When you chase jobs away, people are going to flee. Governor Hochul has had a complete about face from where she was a year ago, saying, "Get out of town, get out of state. We don't care." And now she's begging people to come back. I feel badly for the hardworking New Yorkers who are going to have to bear more taxes because they're going to see more capital flee. And again, we weren't able to attract everyone to South Florida who wanted to come here. We've been growing in population. I don't think people should be forced to flee a jurisdiction because their leadership is so poor that they thumb their nose at business, that they look to tax. But that's what I think a lot of people are feeling in New York.
I think you're right about that. And have you spoken to lots of your constituents as mayor who have actually verbalized that to you, that they've moved because of that reason?
Absolutely. And it started under COVID. Florida was well open, and we had states that were still, maintaining lockdowns much longer than turned out to be advisable. And people were worried about that. And they just felt that they wanted a better life. They were able to come down to Florida. The weather helped, certainly. But people, yes, that's why I think we've seen a lot more conservative growth. And from places that we didn't typically get new residents from the Chicagoland area, from California. They'd go to other places. A lot of them come to South Florida in a big way. And yes, they wanted lower taxes, better quality of life. And that's what we've delivered.
You also have a very large Jewish community in the Boca area, as well as in this new district that you're running for. And I know that you've been very, very outspoken in terms of anti-Semitism and against anti-Semitism, and that you sit on this board of combat anti-Semitism. Could you explain that? What is that?
Absolutely. So it's the Combating Anti-Semitism movement is a national movement. It's a foundation that does exactly what it says, combating anti-Semitism. I got involved years ago. They've done a great job in convening mayors from across the country and across the world at annual conferences. That's how I first got to know them and got to be more involved in their work. They work with other policymakers at all levels of government. I'm honored to serve on their national advisory board. And in fact, on Monday in the district in Miami Beach, we're kicking off a new Jewish Mayors and Municipal Leaders Alliance that's going to live within CAM, and which I think is just another opportunity for us to get more advocates for Jewish issues and against anti-Semitism. They were instrumental in a lot of states adopting what we did at the city of Boca Raton, which was the International Holocaust Remembrance Association definition of anti-Semitism. It's a standard definition. It's used by governments and law enforcement as a tool to understand when you have hate motivated crimes. And I think it's important more than ever with the dramatic rise in anti Semitism, with it being normalized. I feel more on the left, but even what some will call the extreme right, but Nick Fuentes, and I hate to even utter his name, is not from the right. He's an avowed communist. It's just he's a poser, frankly. When you see people like that on both sides normalizing Jewish hate and hate of any kind, we all need to stand up more strong than ever. I'm incredibly disappointed by what I've been seeing in New York City, even a couple days ago with marches that were ostensibly pro-Palestinian but targeting Jewish neighborhoods. It felt like Crown Heights in the 1990s, which was a very regrettable time. And more reports about what's happening in New York. When you don't have respect for law enforcement, when law enforcement is not able to keep feels that they're hands off, when you have protests outside even Gracie Mansion that turn into violence, that's a problem. And we need leaders at all levels to stand up against hate, stand with all Americans' right to worship freely. That includes the Jewish people.
It is really shocking to see what is going on in New York and to see how quickly the flavor of a mayor can change the environment. And uh, it is great to see what you've done in Boca Raton and what a haven it has become. I mean, I think you benefit dramatically from the beautiful weather that you have there, but it also is the environment that you create and the partnership that you have with law enforcement and the different entities that make up a community. So, uh, do you see, is there amongst mayors across the country any sort of organization that connects them, that, that where they come together to discuss the issues that face our country and how it gets interpreted on a more local level?
Absolutely. So I've been involved in several organizations. I'm actually the chair of one now. While I was mayor, I was on the advisory board for the U.S. Conference of Mayors. That's a group of mayors, bipartisan for cities larger than 30,000 people. So you get mayors across the country. Now, naturally, more big cities have Democratic mayors, so you have a more leaning. It is a little more, it's bipartisan, but the makeup is more Democratic than Republican. But found colleagues, working on solutions for our cities. Being a conservative mayor, I thought it was important that I had the opportunity to talk with America First Policy Institute. That's a think tank that has close ties to the Trump administration. It was formed in the waning days of Trump 45. They've sent 90 plus of their alumni into the administration, including 7 cabinet officials. I started working with them on 2024 on some of their policy points on anti-Semitism and higher ed reform, seeing what was going on in our campuses, especially in the wake of October 7 and the shameful statements that came out of university presidents. I started working with them on some higher ed reform ideas. A lot of those got enmeshed into executive orders. And in just talking with AFPI, I knew they had a governor's council. I said, why don't we have a mayor's council? So I kicked it off. I've been their inaugural chair. In less than a year, we've gained more than 60 mayors from across the country. We're meeting regularly. We have convenings, and we've had some summits with the White House and cabinet departments and officials. really trying to advance common sense solutions and find better ties between the administration on issues that affect us in our cities.
So Scott, you as mayor are involved in local politics, local to Boca Raton, local to Florida. We in New York are very concerned about what's going on in the New York local political world, in the state assembly, in the community council. Um, the DSA candidates are taking over and they're transforming our cities in New York into something that we don't even recognize, that I don't recognize. Communism, anti-Israel, anti-Semitism, all taking over, and all of our centrist Democrat Western values are being eroded and taken away very quickly. So, in your experience at the United States Conference of Mayors, was there any discussion about that? Did you experience that in any way? Did anyone speak about that?
No, fortunately not. And I think it's for several reasons. First, you had United States Conference of Mayors has mayors from across the country, the heartland, the big cities. You have Democrats and Republicans. It's not, it's not as one-sided. And when you're leaving New York, I think it's hard for New Yorkers to understand how the other half of the nation lives. I lived in New York for nearly 10 years. I understand it. But what you're seeing in New York is very different than other places. Maybe it's the leading edge, it's the bellwether. You're seeing sort of radical ideas in other places, not sort of radicals. You're seeing radical ideas and radical candidates in other places like Seattle running on platforms that are DSA or DSA aligned and of great concern. I didn't see it so much in the national organization, but for New Yorkers, the concern is real. And even as an outsider who still has family in New York, who still has in the New York area, who has ties there, it's concerning, it's alarming, it's disturbing. Whether it was protests just this week, where you're seeing neighborhoods in Brooklyn with high Jewish populations being targeted by, quote, Palestinian protesters. Why are you walking through a neighborhood? And why is it a neighborhood of Jewish people? And why is that continued to allow to go on? We saw the horrifying scenes of people unable to get into their synagogues. And I'm disturbed that Mayor Mondani vetoed even a bill by the city council to create safe buffer zones, one for synagogues and houses of worship, okay, but on campus, no. As if the students who were in a no Jewish person zone at Columbia, somehow that's protest. It's not. It's harassment. It's illegal. This government leaders should be cracking down on it and stopping it. And we have a mayor who's enabling it to happen the next time. Incredibly heartbreaking. New Yorkers need to think accordingly. They need to get more involved. And a lot of them can lead to better places. Move your capital like Ken Griffin did to South Florida, to Boca Raton as well.
Wow. The way you lay it out is quite frightening. How much, in your opinion, is determined by the mayor of that area?
Well, it differs among other cities, but mayor of New York is like being a governor. I mean, you have a great amount of authority, a great amount of executive authority. And again, it's concerning. Other mayors, other cities don't have the executive mayor format. It's more the mayor is basically the chair of the board of directors. They're setting policy and they leave it to a city manager to implement. Most cities in America, most smaller cities have that form of government, but New York is its own category. Maybe that's why no one who's ever been elected mayor of New York has gone on to any other elected office. I certainly hope that with this mayor, but that's neither here nor there. The point is, to your question, yeah, the mayor can do a lot in a city, a lot of good, but also a lot of damage. And I don't want to see damage happen, even if it benefits jobs in Boca Raton. I don't want to see anti-Semitism go unchecked. I don't want to see communist ideas take place anywhere in America, and I'll work to fight them wherever I can.
Well, sadly, we're coming to the end of our time together. And I really thank you for your service and thank you for everything that you've done to make South Florida an amazing place. And all that you've done on the front with combating anti-Semitism and standing up for for the Jewish community in this country also. This has been a go ahead. Go
Well, I
ahead.
just wanted to say thank you, Trudy. Part of the reason I'm running for Congress is because I think we need strong and continued advocates against anti-Semitism, for people's ability to worship, and for our strong partnership with Israel. I would endeavor to do that in Congress because those are the values that have shaped me. But I think again, Our strong relationship with Israel is in America's interest. We saw what happened in June, the partnership last June that helped take out a serious nuclear threat. We see the constant sharing of intelligence and labor and the recent struggle with Iran that are also making the world safe from a terrorist state that was raining down terror on other nations who are non-combatants. We understand the existential threat, and I think we need voices in Congress who are going to be strong advocates there. That's why I'm running.
Well, Scott, it's been really good to get to know you and for our listeners to get to know you a little bit. And we wish you the very best of luck. Tonight was a very, very important conversation, not only because we've heard about what's happening in Florida, but because the redistricting is a real issue that we all need to understand what's happening. And I think that was a very enlightening first part of our discussion. The growing importance of South Florida politically, the rise in anti-Semitism, the debates over leadership and representation. These are all reflections of larger shifts that are happening across our country, and redistricting matters in all of those places. Races like yours are increasingly becoming national races. Decisions made in districts like yours don't just impact one community. They impact the direction of the Congress and in many ways the direction of the country itself. So thanks so much, Scott, for joining us and for sharing your perspective with our listeners.
Well, thank you.
To our listeners, thank you for joining us. This has been Nothing But the Truth with Trudy Stern. You can catch us every Thursday at 9:30 p.m. on the radio. And if you missed any part of this show or want to listen to any of our past episodes, you can find Nothing But the Truth wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, stay strong, stay informed, and keep seeking nothing but the truth.